All right, YouTube. So I wanted to give my thoughts on a topic that I don't believe I've ever actually mentioned, even in passing on a video on this channel before. And that topic is, well, should hemp be legalized? The short answer is, of course, yes. But I have some varied thoughts, and I also wanted to talk about some of the, I like to call these people the hypercannabinoids. The people, there's a fucking bug on the webcam. Sorry. But, the people who say, oh, you've seen it with marijuana, right? Or cannabis. They say, oh, cannabis can cure cancer and it can be applied for all these different things. And whilst, I think it can be used for Parkinson's and calming down epilepsy, and while cannabis does have pain-killing properties that really helps with HIV and AIDS patients, it doesn't cure cancer. What people traditionally use marijuana for is to cope with chemo, cope with the weakness, build up an appetite again. But the same holds true for hemp, but it's in different things. Now, I do, believe in the health aspects for hemp. For some reason, you can buy hemp seeds, or like the crushed up seeds, as a food product here in the States, which I use. I eat hemp. I put it in my Greek yogurt. It's pretty good. I also throw in some nuts, some other nuts, and every once in a while dried fruit, usually figs. Really good. You should try it. But people, while here's what I believe hemp can be used for. I think it'll be really good in the fabric industry. I think it'll be good with the clothing industry, hemp rope, of course. I think it will be good as a certain type of concrete. I'll get into that later. And a good food source. I mean, you can make tea out of it. You can make seeds out of it. Or seeds, rather. You can make food out of it, rather. Sorry. But I see these people who are potheads that I'm friends with on Facebook, and they're consistently sharing things about hemp, like you could build a house out of hemp, you can do this and that out of hemp. And I have to put my foot down at that point. Yeah, okay, you can make a house out of hemp. But, and they're talking about hempcrete. And I think it can be used in certain types of settings. And also I think a good use for it would be alternative plastics too, because it actually is biodegradable. But I don't think a lot of people are going to want a house made out of hemp. Furthermore, this kind of economics of hemp becomes I think these people are kind of the tree hugger types. If hemp becomes a very hot commodity, it will probably be cheaper to use lumber to build a house than hemp. And this might be a controversial thing to say here, but I have no problem with the logging industry. I have no problem with people owning private lumber forests, so long as for every tree that they chop down, they put one in its place, preferably two, and preferably a native tree species to their area. For instance, here in my area, we have something called the European market. For anybody that's outside of this area, it's basically a farmer's market. They all set up in the town square, and they all have their own little vending booths. And they sell trinkets, but at ours, we actually have the local DNR. And what they do is that they actually they just give these away. They give away saplings of trees. And there's, I think, 3 different species, but I'm only interested in 2. So every year, the first weekend it starts, I get 2 of each. So when I get home, I plant 2 red cedar trees and 2 white oak trees. Cedar trees in the murkier parts. This area is technically considered a swamp. Up here we call them marshes or wetlands. And there's a well-drained area. There's a ridge where I consistently put white oak trees, and they're doing very well. I just have to weed out the poison ivy that's now growing around them, unfortunately. So I have no problem with it as long as they're putting more trees down in the ground. But with that being said, when hemp becomes legalized, everybody's going to hop on it, and it's going to be expensive to even buy seeds. And I think it will probably take a year or two for the price to drop. And if it's still a hot commodity, the price will be very high. So you have to kind of choose. Do I want to go use cedar wood, or do I want to go and use hemp to build my house? I think the food industry will probably be a little different. I think a lot of people will be grabbing hemp up because it does have good omega-3 fatty acids, I believe. And if you're wondering what the taste is like, it's got the texture of a minced peanut, but it tastes reminiscent of broccoli. It's like a mix between some type of nut and broccoli. And it's a little green on the inside. But it still tastes pretty good. I think the tea industry will probably have a new crop to put in there. The food industry will have a new ingredient. We need to focus more on food anyway. There's like 7,000 crops we can choose from, but for some reason people only limit themselves to 30 crops. You know, they won't go outside into their yard and say like, oh, that's curly dog, that's edible, but I'm not going to eat it. Well, why? Just eat it. Eat it, you pussy. Anyways, that's a pretty good plant too. You know, I'm blessed to have this yard because I have so many different native plants to choose from to eat. I have wild grapes, I have high bush cranberry, I have giant ragweed. But as for hemp prohibition, yeah, it's retarded. And the only reason I'm really on board with marijuana prohibition is because of the hemp part. I don't give a fucking shit about marijuana. I never liked it. It always made me feel weird when I smoked it. I never really had the happy time, you know. I was always paranoid out of my mind. I'm not going to retry it. I mean, I might if it's federally legal, but it'd probably be like a one-time ordeal. I am honestly led to believe that the feeling of marijuana, the effects it produces, are completely overhyped because it's illegal. Now, I don't think I'd probably feel anything unless I was doing concentration, you know, like hash or something. But then again, I'm not really looking to do anything like that at this point. But as for hemp, you know, that's the only reason I'm on board with cannabis legalization. Because I do think it'll add a new crop. I do think it's a multi-purpose, very useful crop. I mean, fuck, in World War II, it was ended. The prohibition of it was ended just to help in the war effort, because I can't remember exactly what it was used for, but it helped with something with the troops. And then once World War II ended, they fucking banned it again. And here's the thing, it's the same thing with the tobacco companies and the alcohol companies with marijuana. The lumber companies and these construction materials companies are so freaked out that hemp's going to knock their market out. I don't know where this paranoia comes from. It's going to be expensive as hell for a while. The government's probably going to have strict regulations on it, so only a few thousand people will likely grow it. And by the end of that, it'll be so fucking expensive that your product will be cheaper. And with tobacco and alcohol, it's a similar story, but it's a little different. Tobacco and alcohol don't produce nearly the same effects as marijuana, let alone do they make the same effects or similar effects as each other. Alcohol's, a little different than marijuana. Marijuana, if you've smoked a joint, you've probably been less inebriated if you've had a couple beers. And tobacco's a stimulant. Plus, there's a physical dependency. I mean, I'm hooked on nicotine. I've been slowing down on it. I've been trying to cut down on my intake. But I'm still addicted to it. I still get the withdrawal symptoms. Now, I vape, so I don't get the cigarette bitch fits. But it's still there. Sometimes it's hard for me to cope with stressful situations unless I have that by my side. So I don't know what these companies are freaking out about. It's just going to add something else to the market. If someone's addicted to cigarettes, they're not going to quit just because marijuana is legalized. If someone's going to maybe get some hempcrete, I don't think that's going to stop them from buying wood to make a house. So that's about it, YouTube. That's my thoughts on hemp prohibition and stuff like that. Peace out. And I plan to make a video on the first presidential debate soon.